How many of you know we are in the dire straits? What in the world? Who does not know what the dire straits are? Anyone here who has no clue what I'm talking about? Okay. The dire straits began 3 weeks ago, and it begins historically, okay? It was on the 17th of Tammuz on the biblical calendar when they worshiped the golden calf in the Torah. And so that's when it began. It ends actually tomorrow. Tonight begins the 9th day of the month of Av. Now, what happened on this day? You see in the picture here, it's Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the 9th of Av. And the Av is the 5th month on the biblical calendar. That's why I have the 5th month. Those 3 weeks are known as the dire straits, like you're in a real tight place. Well, Israel is in a real tight place these 3 weeks every year, and so they're praying over these 3 weeks that as a nation they would repent and turn back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It culminates starting tomorrow with the 9th of Av. This is the day, tomorrow, well, starting tonight, tomorrow is the very day the 10 spies brought the bad report. And when they brought the bad reports, remember Joshua and Caleb, they said, let's do it. This event historically happened tomorrow. And because they rejected the land, that day was cursed all throughout Jewish history. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read something about the 9th of Av because we have a lot of people on the internet that want to know, how do we commemorate this day? This day is so significant when you look at what happened. So I'm going to tell you some of the things that happened tomorrow historically. Jewish history is replete with a list of calamities that took place tomorrow. Here are some of the events that took place. Besides the spies bringing the bad report, which is found in Numbers chapter 13 and 14, and so they couldn't enter the promised land, Solomon's temple in 586 BC was destroyed on this very day, the 9th of Av. 600 years later, in 70 AD, when the Romans destroyed that temple, same day, the 9th of Av. Also in the year 135, the last fortress to hold out against the Romans during the Bar Kokhba revolt fell. A year later, the temple was plowed over, marking the last milestone of a national Jewish presence in the homeland on the 9th of Av. The Jews of England were expelled from England in 1290 on this very day. The Jews in Spain were expelled in 1492 on this very day. World War I erupted on this very day. All the Hitler's proclamation to kill the Jews in World War II was on this very day. The mass deportation of Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto to the Treblinka death camp began on this day. All the Jews of Gush Katif in 2005 were expelled from their homes on the Gaza Strip on this day. So anyway, there's a few things that happened on this day. So you can see why this is a fast day. Those of you that want to, I have a verse here everyone I think is familiar with from the book of Romans, chapter 12. Verse 15, it says, rejoice with those that do rejoice, and what? Weep with those that weep. It says, have the same respect one toward another, not minding high things, but going along with the lowly. Be not wise in your own eyes. And so for me, I really believe that this is a time, not only do we rejoice, but we also need to weep with our brothers and sisters, the Jewish people. And so we need to join our Jewish friends. Now, people ask, well, what in the world do they do on this day? How do we commemorate this day? Well, what people do, they spend this day remembering, okay, the destructions of the temple both times. But the thing to really think about it, can you imagine living back in Solomon's temple time? What if you lived during the time of Solomon's temple and God's presence, the Shekinah, was right there over the temple? Can you imagine anyone in the world, all the Gentiles could come and see a visible representation of God's presence, His glory right there on that temple? Incredible. How in the world, I mean, could you imagine what it would be like if there was a temple today with the Shekinah presence going? How that would not rock the world. And so I think the other thing we need to mourn is the exiting of the Shekinah glory. And I think we should want it back. Now, I thought this was kind of interesting. This came from a Jewish rabbi had written this. He said that we should spend the day mourning the destruction of the temple both times, the exile of the divine presence, and the unredeemed state of the nation of Israel. Now, what's interesting is, do you know what book they read on this day? It's a short book. It's the book of Lamentations. And the book of Lamentations, written by Jeremiah, was what? Mourning the destruction of the temple. And as well as the divine presence leaving. They also fast, like I said, from sunset to sunset. Now, here's what another rabbi said that I thought was absolutely incredible. Listen to this. Jeremiah the prophet does not lament because the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. Rather, he laments over the underlying causes of the destruction. And this annual lesson must serve to focus the national mourning on this day, not to the past, but to the present. It is not enough to bemoan the great loss suffered by the Jewish people with the destruction of our land, our holy city, our holy temple. We must use our mourning as a way of initiating an examination of our present day feelings, our present day thoughts, and our present day deeds. The question he says is this: what have we done to eliminate the very attitudes and practices that thousands of years ago sent our ancestors into exile, not once but twice? How have we improved our approach to the divine service as a way of life, a life devoted to duty rather than a substitute for it? Do you know what the destruction of the temple was based on? They say, what was the underlying cause? It was the baseless hatred of one toward another. Loshan hara, speaking evil speech, just hating one another for no reason at all. Well, if we're to merit the return of the divine presence, I think we truly must love one another in unity. And I have this little article I just read on our website for those of you that want to print that out and have that. But here's the other amazing thing. If you look back up at that PowerPoint I have a Bible verse, and it's Zechariah chapter 8 and verse 19. Is there anybody here that knows what that says? This is your key text. This is your very key text for I don't know how many of you like prophecy, but if you're interested in prophecy, you need to know this verse. This verse mentions that these 4 fasts, such as the 9th of Av, they call it the fast of the 5th month, okay? The fast of the 3rd month, the fast of the 7th month, the fast of the 10th month. It says these fast days are going to turn into feast days. So that means prophetically something's going to happen that is going to turn the tables and make these days of mourning into something glorious. But if you don't know when these days fall on our regular calendar, you're not going to know that this prophecy is fulfilled. You'll be clueless. You won't have any idea. So this is why it's important to know these days and to be aware of what's going on and to be praying. Think about this for a minute. Let's say something happens as a result of your prayer. Would that excite you if it was a direct result of your prayer, something happened, and you knew it was a direct result of your prayer? Now, do you want to be praying on that day and as a direct result of your prayer, seeing something happen? Or do you want to see something happen and realize you had no part in bringing it to pass? Some year, something's going to be happening on that day, and it could be tomorrow. We don't know. But man, I tell you what, when God does something, I would like to know that I participated in having it come to pass. Wouldn't you? Okay. Let's go to the next clip, see where we're at. Oh, yes. How many of you are familiar with this one? This was on the news today. The stocks end violent sell-off at a session historic lows. It's the worst day since the credit crisis, back in 2008. You know what was fascinating? This is happening during the dire straits. During the time of contraction, constriction, and pain. See, people don't make this connection because they don't know what's going on. And here it is, the 9th of Av beginning tonight. This is right at the end. Well, if you guys remember back in 2008, when the big event happened they're referring to here, what month was it on the biblical calendar? It was Tishri, which is which month? The 7th month. So here, on the first day of the 7th month, the Dow fell 777 points, a 7% drop, resulting in a $700 billion loss in the 7th month. Okay, well, guess what? This is the 5th month, and the Dow fell 5.55%. And the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Hey, which means to behold, look, look, look. And this last weekend is the Shabbat of Chazon, vision. Hello, can we see what is happening here? It's probably just a coincidence. Now, I don't know how many of you are on the internet, but here is Arut Sheva, Israel National News, and they're talking about the mourning the destruction of the temple and hoping for redemption. And it has this picture of these people here. I don't know how many of you have computers, but guess what the most looked at news report was today? It was the Shema event about churches reading the Torah as others had read the Quran. So here we made Israel's national news all over the world. This was the most read event about, and this is a picture of all our group in Itamar, Israel. And you can see it on our website. We have a link to the Arut Sheva article talking about how this coming weekend, when the Shema, or to hear and obey, the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, is being read all over the world by all the Jews. Here we've tried to get people from all over the world to sign up. And we're doing it. It's incredible how many people we have signed up, how many churches, almost at every time zone, all over the world, 6 continents, several hundred churches. So it's really exciting that we have that going on. So I wanted to also use this as a way to let you guys know this weekend's going to be big. We want you to come, invite your friends. This Saturday morning, I'll be speaking on replacement theology. And then Lori will be speaking about proclaiming justice to the nations, how we need to get a better understanding of the Christian relationship to the Jewish people. And then Monday night, we're going to be watching the video of Christianity and the Holocaust. And then after that, we're going to have a panel discussion with Charlie Schiffman, who is the executive vice president of the Jewish Federation out of Portland, Oregon, or he was for 25 years. He just retired. I think we're going to have Yishel Stefanski here as well. And so we'll watch the video on Christianity and the Holocaust, then have this back and forth panel discussion. I highly recommend those of you that go to another church to try to get your pastor to come, your church people to come, so they can really get a handle on replacement theology. Here's something else that we have now on our website that I want to encourage everyone to go. I don't know if you guys know, but we now have radio spots on Spirit 105.3 promoting this event. We have 2 different spots promoting this weekend, and then we have one promoting the Paul Wilbur concert coming up. But I also give a short Bible teaching as well. But anyway, you can listen to it whenever you want by going to the website. So I want to just encourage everyone to go to the website and listen to those radio spots. Now, what we're going to be talking about tonight, I don't know if you remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about the separation of church and faith. This is part 2. But I like to give credit where credit is due. This is the book, and it is written by Daniel Gruber. Here's a copy of it here. Excellent book. And I also want to give you his website. It's www.elijahnet.net. The reason why I want to give you that website is because he has a lot of free material and free books, free is good, on his website. And one of the books that he has that's available for you to read, that I've read, that is absolutely incredible, which will help give you a better understanding, is the book called Torah and the New Covenant. What a concept. Okay? Who knows where this is? Israel, all right. All right, there's the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan, here's the Dead Sea, Mediterranean. 40 miles wide, guys. 40 miles. The entire nation of Israel will fit between Seattle and Tacoma, basically. And they want to divide it in half. People have no clue. They don't understand the dimensions of this thing. But let's start. Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 9 is where we're going to start, but first we're going to pray. Father, I pray that you would open our eyes of our understanding, that during this week of vision, we would have eyes to see and ears to hear and hearts to understand what you're speaking to the church in these days. We just ask you in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 9 is where I want to begin. Let's look at what it says. It says, "And Moses and the priests, the Levites, spoke unto all of Israel, saying, Take heed and hearken, O Israel. Hear, O Israel, this day have you become the people of the Lord your God." Okay, what does it say? This day you have become the people of the Lord your God. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8 through 10. "When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel." Now, I've mentioned this before, but who can tell me why this is so incredible? Exactly. This was before there ever was an Israel. This was before Abraham even existed. This is during the time of Noah is when God separated all the nations. And yet, when he separated them, he did it according to the number of people that wouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. So does that mean God has a little bit of foreknowledge on what he's going to do? And then look at what it says. "For the Lord's portion is his people." Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found Israel in a desert land and in the waste howling wilderness. He led him about, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. Now, if something is the apple of your eye, what does that mean? That is your focus. I mean, if you're focused on anything, that's what you're focused on. So we see here that he gave all the nations all this property, all this land, and he let them have all of their land property first, and then he gave the smallest piece of property to the most despised people. I mean, how many of you, when you're in school, and you always get the popular people, and they always get everything, you know, whatever, the cheerleaders, the sports people, and they get all the attention. And there's always the one person, like when you get picked on a baseball team or a basketball team that doesn't even get picked. He's the last person, or he just kind of walks over to the other side, you know, nobody wants him. That was Israel. And God said, you know what? It's not because you're great or mighty or have any wealth. I'm going to pick you. Why? Because that way God's going to get all the glory. If he picked a country that was great and powerful or someone who was deserving, what is the person who's deserving going to think? They picked me because I'm bad. Or, yeah, this is why he didn't pick them. Okay. Now, here's what's interesting. Many people turn rabid at the mention of the Jews as God's chosen people. Don't they? Sometimes the Jews even get that way. I'm serious. They say, God, would you please pick someone else? But here's the interesting thing. Now, this is what I'm going to share with you now is going to be some paradigm shifts for the rest of this time that's going to kind of rock your world a little bit. So I want to go slow. And sometimes I have underlining things I'm saying when I say things, and I hope you get it. I know some people will get it and some people won't get it. But that's just the way it is. Just like Korah, they reject God's choice of Moses and Aaron and choose themselves instead, not realizing, first off, that being chosen makes life a lot harder, not a lot easier. The fact that all of Israel was chosen by God was not enough for Korah and his group. They wanted to be in charge. They wanted to set up their own religious system, just like Jeroboam did later on. They had a lot of popular support, but God was not impressed. They were not content with the grace that was shown to them. Okay? Look at Numbers 16:3. They gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and they said unto them, You take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them. The Lord is among them, wherefore then lift you up yourselves above the congregation of the Lord. There is a lot here in this statement. But first off, when we understand holy means to be set apart, doesn't it? Who set Moses and Aaron apart? God did. If I recall, Moses says, I don't want to do this to begin with, and Moses drug Aaron coming along with him. Okay? And God is the one that told Moses and Aaron that they were the ones that are going to be doing this. And yet, even though Korah was, like all of Israel, was separated, and then God goes and he begins to separate other people for certain parts, just like in the New Testament. Some are a hand, some are an eye, some are a foot. We all have to work together. But here you have part of the body saying, I want to be in charge. Instead of the eye leading the way and seeing the way, okay, the toe wants to go where it wants to go. Well, the toe doesn't see what's ahead. What happens when everything is holy? Nothing is holy. Did you catch that? If everything is holy, nothing is holy. Holy means to be set apart. Okay? God is holy, holy, holy. I mean, he is set apart, and then more set apart, and then more set apart. All of Israel was holy. They were all set apart from the nations, but then God says, okay, Levites, you are not only holy, you are holy, holy. I'm separating you from the rest. And then he says, and sons of Aaron, you not only are holy, holy, you're holy. You're even set apart. Only you can do the work of the divine service. And God is the one that decided that. It wasn't Aaron. It wasn't Moses. But Korah rose up in rebellion saying, no, I want to have a new religious system. I want to be in charge. I want to be the one to determine how everything is done. But this goes back to every day being holy. How often do you hear people say, well, every day is holy? If every day is holy, how many days are holy? None of them are holy. Now, non-Jews are grafted in, and they also participate as the people of God. So we're all grafted in as the people of God. So in one sense, we're all set apart, but God has each person doing a different function, and we can't be upset. Just like an older son and a younger son, or an older daughter and a younger daughter, the older one gets more responsibility than the younger one, but it doesn't mean one is preferred over the other one. Jews are not better than Gentiles, but at the same time, Jews are also not worse than Gentiles. We live in a time when the politicians and many theologians want to divide the land of Israel, right? And Jerusalem. Well, think about this. If there's no God, then they have nothing to worry about. But if the God of Israel exists, they are in big trouble. But here's what's important. If you look at the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 16, what do you remember here? Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you. Did you catch that? So Ruth is saying, look, I don't want to leave you. I don't want to leave the Jewish people. And I don't want to return from following after you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. She did not say, you are no longer a part of God. I am now the only part of God. Ruth did not replace Naomi. Ruth was united with Naomi. And we're to be united with the people of God, not replace the people of God. And according to what we read in Deuteronomy 32, who are the people of God? Israel. They are the people of God. So Christians don't replace the people of God, Israel. Christians are what? United with the people of God in Israel. Some people just don't want to be associated with the Jewish people. Well, if that's the case, you might want to check your ticket. You may be on a different flight. All right. Now let me ask you something. Do we as Christians ever fall short? Yes. How many of you believe we fall short? Daily. Okay. Now what happens when we fall short? We have God's grace. Is that true? How many believe that when we fall short, and we all fall short, God's grace? Let me ask you something. Did Israel ever fall short? Well, what happens when Israel falls short? God's grace. There is no such thing as dispensationalism. That's just so stupid to think, well, back then it was law. and now everything's grace. Well, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Look at James chapter 1, verse 17. It says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. So was God going to say, law, bad? Matter of fact, I think about this too. There was baseless hatred, so God destroys the temple, right? And then again, baseless hatred. God destroys the temple. Matter of fact, he destroyed Moses' tabernacle, didn't he? Okay, he said, look what he did to Shiloh. And then why? Because they were not following the Torah. They refused to follow the Torah. They refused to follow instruction. So it's one thing to be kicked out of the house. But how would you like your parents to not only kick you out of the house, but burn the house down and leave? Now that is, man, they're upset. Okay? So think about this. God destroys the temple because they're not following Torah. I mean, it really upsets them. And then all of a sudden God says, okay, I've destroyed the temple, 70 AD. Now guess what? Now I'm going to destroy you if you start following the Torah. Ha, ha, ha. I mean, is God going to say the Torah is the law and it's right now, but now we're going to throw out the Torah and it's all grace and you can be lawless and do whatever you want? As a matter of fact, I'll punish you if you follow the Torah. The first thing is, I punish you if you don't follow Torah. Then he says, now I'm going to punish you if you do follow Torah. Does that make sense? Doesn't make any sense. God's not going to say Torah good. Oop, Torah bad. Oop, now Torah good, because Torah is going to be going forth to all of the world when he returns, it says. So that doesn't make, that's, talk about shadow of turning. That's like a huge shadow. Okay, but here's the thing to remember. Israel was not chosen because of their faith or obedience. Did you hear that? Israel was not faithful. Israel was not obedient. Okay, God did not choose them because of that. As a matter of fact, no one is chosen because they deserve to be chosen. And if you think you were chosen because of some greatness of your own, then you're denying the very need for Messiah to die, his atonement. Okay? So let's look at Jeremiah 31, verse 1 through 7. Now, who remembers what is the famous verse in Jeremiah 31:31? Does anyone remember Jeremiah 31? I see that hand over there. What is it? The new covenant. Okay? So the new covenant, it says in Jeremiah 31:31, is with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. But look how this whole chapter begins. Look how it starts. It says in verse 1, at the same time, saith the Lord, will I be the God of all the families of Israel, and they shall be my people. Thus saith the Lord, the people which were left of the sword found what? Grace. What? They found grace in the wilderness? I thought there was no grace in the Old Testament. I thought it was just law, and grace is in the New Testament. No, law and grace go together. You can never have all law. You can never have all grace. They go together. There was law and grace in the Old Testament. There's law and grace in the New Testament. And then, what does it say? Even who? I think God had this purposely there, real big. Yes, I'm talking about Israel, guys. Yes, even Israel found grace in the wilderness. When I went to cause them to rest. Now look at this. It says, the Lord has appeared of old to me, saying, yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you. How many have heard that verse before? I have drawn you with an everlasting, I've loved you with an everlasting love. You guys heard that before? Right? And most Christians have, and most Christians apply it to themselves. You can do that, but don't steal it. You got to give it back. Who did it apply to? So he's saying here, I love the Jewish people with an everlasting love. How long of a love? Everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn the Jewish people. And then he says, again, I will build you, and you shall be built, O Virgin of Israel. You'll be again adorned with your tabrets. You'll go forth in the dances of them that make merry. You shall plant vines on the mountains of Samaria. The planters will plant and eat them as common things. For there shall be a day that the watchman upon Mount Ephraim will cry. Now, you know what's interesting about that word watchman, right? This word watchman in Hebrew is notzrim, which is what the Jews today translate as Christians. That's what it says. So basically what this is saying is, there's going to be these Gentile believers on Mount Ephraim crying out, "Arise and let us go to Zion and to the Lord our God. For thus saith the Lord, sing with gladness for Jacob, shout among the chief of the nations, publish you, praise you, and say, O Lord, save" who? Your people, the remnant of... So who's this talking about? The Jewish people. These are the nations praising God and praying to God, which is what we could be doing tomorrow on the 9th of Av. Save your people. These are your people. Why would you cry to God to save their people if you don't believe they're his people anyway? I mean, think about a father who's lost a child, or a mother who's lost a child. They can't find it, and all the neighbors around looking for the kid that's been lost. They would love to hear their neighbors calling out their child's name, trying to find them, rather than trying to call them out all alone. Imagine how you can touch the heart of God while you're crying out to heaven, save your people. Now look at Romans 5:8. How many of you are familiar with this verse? But God commends his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Messiah died for us. Is Paul, who wrote this? Paul? Is he Jewish? And he says, guess what? After reading this verse about all this love that God has for his people, I have loved you, Israel, with everlasting love, and with loving kindness have I drawn you. And then in Romans, he says, God's commended his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Messiah died for us. Who's the us here? We have this Western Greek mindset, and we think the us refers to Gentiles. He's speaking to the Jewish people. Look, God commended his love toward us. While we were yet sinners, the Jewish people, Messiah died for us. And Gentiles are grafted into that. And that's great. But to think this verse only applies to Gentiles and doesn't apply to the Jewish people is absurd. Especially, he was writing to the Jewish people saying, God commended his love toward us while we were yet sinners as Jewish people. Messiah died for us, the Jewish people. Now look at Galatians 2:7 and 8. It says, now, who wrote Galatians? Okay, Rabbi Shaul. Okay, the Apostle Paul. He says, contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed to me, that's referring to the Gentiles, right? Just as the gospel of the circumcision was given to who? Okay, so Paul is speaking to the Gentiles, and the gospel to the Jewish people was given to who? Peter. So Peter was taking the gospel to the Jewish people as Paul was to the Gentiles, and look what Paul wrote. He that wrought effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles. So in other words, just as Paul was doing such a great job for the Gentiles, Peter was doing such a great job with the Jewish people. Matter of fact, it says in Acts 21, thousands and thousands are being saved. In Acts 7, it says thousands of priests are being saved. So who do you think was leading all the priests to the Messiah and the tens of thousands of Jews to the Messiah? It was who? Now, don't you think it's kind of funny? Who knew the scriptures better? Rabbi Shaul, Apostle Paul, or Peter the dumb fisherman? So what does God do? He takes the great intelligent rabbi to go speak to the stupid Gentiles. He takes the stupid Jew to go speak to all the smart Jews. That's God. That's what he does. You would think he would take Paul to go to the Jewish people and Peter to go to the Gentiles. But who wants the glory? God wants the glory. Okay, so Peter, his gospel was sent to who? The Jewish people. Look in Isaiah 45:4. God says, for Jacob my servant's sake and Israel mine elect. Okay, who's the elect here? Okay, I have even called you by your name. I surnamed you, though you haven't even known me. Look at Isaiah 65:9. I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob and out of Judah, an inheritor of my mountains, and my elect will inherit it, and my servants will dwell there. Okay, who's the elect? Isaiah 65:22. They will not build and another inhabit, they'll not plant and another eat, for as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Okay, who's his people here? That's who he's talking to. Look at, now, so when we see who is the elect, people are always asking me, well, who's the elect? The Jewish people. And we're grafted in. Okay? We don't want to be like Korah. Now, so we see that the elect is Israel. Now look at Deuteronomy 4:27. What does God say to Israel, though? He says, the Lord will scatter you among the nations, and you'll be left a few in number among the heathen, where the Lord shall lead you. So what's going to happen to the Jewish people? They're going to be scattered to all the nations. So that means they're going to be the strangers. Who are the strangers in all the nations? The people that were scattered. Doesn't that make sense? Okay, like if you grew up in Kansas, and that's where all your family is and your roots are you a stranger in Kansas? No. I'm setting you up, guys. You're going to love this. Okay, look at Deuteronomy 28:64. And the Lord will scatter you among all people, from one end of the earth even to the other, and there you're going to serve other gods, which you have not, nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. So again, he's going to scatter them among all the people, and there they're going to disobey and serve other gods, right? They're going to get real stupid, and God's going to scatter them all over the world. So they're going to be strangers in all the nations. Deuteronomy 32:26. I said I would scatter them into the corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Leviticus 26:33. I'm going to scatter you among the heathen and will draw out a sword after you, and your land will be desolate, your cities waste. So again, have I made the point that the Jews are going to be scattered? So they're going to be the strangers in all the nations. And they're God's elect. And who is Peter the apostle to? The circumcision or the uncircumcision? So when he writes a letter, who's he going to be writing it to? You're about to have your mind be blown. Are you ready now? I want you to read this whole chapter, and you're going to be looking at this, and it's going to go, oh, this is a confused, I don't get it. Because of the past way you've looked at this book. Look at 1 Peter 1. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, Bithynia, elect according to the foreknowledge of God of the Father. Who's he speaking to? And who we've always thought he was referring to? He's not writing to the Gentiles that are scattered who are the elect. He's writing to the Jewish people who are scattered who are the elect. Wait till you understand the consequence of this whole thing now as you read the rest of this book when you go home. Your mind's going to be doing flip-flops. Because you're going to be reading this one, well, that has to refer to Gentiles. That can't refer to the Jews. That has to refer to Gentiles. That can't refer to the Jews. And what I'm going to do is make this unfold, so all of a sudden you're going to go, oh my goodness, what have I been thinking all this time? Look at 1 Peter 2:11 and 12. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims. We've always thought this was referring to Christians. But he's speaking to the Jewish people. He's saying, abstain from the fleshly lusts which war against the soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles. Do you really think he was talking to Gentiles about being among the Gentiles? He's talking about, we always read this as the believing Gentiles to the sinful Gentiles. No, this is the Jewish people who scattered among the Gentiles. He's saying, look, guys, whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may by your what? Oh, what do you think good works refers to? The mitzvot, keeping the commandments. The commandments, keeping the commandments. The mitzvot. It's the word mitzvah is singular commandment. Mitzvot is plural commandments. So he's saying to the Jewish people, as you keep the commandments, the Gentiles are going to see your good works and they're going to glorify God. Well, the Gentiles never did keep the commandments and they still don't want to. And then it says they'll behold and glorify God in the day of your visitation. Now, if you'll notice right here, I took out of this one section, these are all the verses just in 1 Peter, or a lot of them, where he's quoting Leviticus, Isaiah, Psalms, Exodus, Hosea, Proverbs, Isaiah, Genesis, Psalms, Isaiah, Genesis, Proverbs, Isaiah, Genesis, Numbers, Proverbs, Ezekiel, Genesis, Psalms, Isaiah. The whole book is referring to the Tanakh. The Gentiles don't even know the Tanakh. They don't even know what he's talking about. When you read these in context, you can see he's talking to the Jewish people. And in Joel, chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. It says, behold, in those days and in that time when I bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I'm going to gather all the nations. I'll bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. I will plead with them there for who? Okay, my people. Do you guys know what the valley of Jehoshaphat is? It's in Jerusalem. Okay? The Kidron Valley, basically, some people say. But the main thing is this. Who lives in Jerusalem? The Jews. Israel. And he's saying, these are my people. He doesn't say, oh, bring them to New York. He does not say, oh, bring them to France. He says, I'm going to bring them to the valley of Jehoshaphat because that's where my people are. And for my heritage, Israel. And everyone quotes this as an end times verse, and yet for some reason, they don't like to say my heritage, Israel. He says, whom they have what? Scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they've cast lots for my people. Verse 14 through 17. He says, multitudes and multitudes are in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon will be darkened, the stars will withdraw their shining, and the Lord is going to roar out of Zion and utter his voice from, okay, again, it's not from Wichita, Kansas. Okay, it's not from South America. He's going to roar from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth will shake, but the Lord will be the hope of who? And who's he referring to? The Jewish people in Israel, and the strength of the children of Israel. Can't be any more plainer than that. So you know that I am the Lord your God who dwells in Zion, my holy mountain, and then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no strangers pass through her anymore. I tell you what, I don't know about you. There was a pastor that I know that I talked to him trying to say, you got to go on this trip to Israel with me. And he said, why do I want to go there? You know, I have no part or lot in this matter. And I'm thinking, oh man, why in the world? I tell you what, how many of you want to be a stranger to Jerusalem? Hey, if you're part of the Jewish people, that's home. And, oh good, Dan said, okay, I have 1 minute left anyway. And the radio spot is 1 minute. So we're going to have Dan play that 1 minute radio spot that you can hear on KCMS for the coming event. Are you going to play the Lori Cardoza Moore one or the other one? Whichever one you want. I'll play them both. You guys can have an extra minute. Do you remember how God said he declared the end from the beginning? In Revelation, it says Jesus was slain from the foundation of the world. Well, the foundation of the world is the very first word of the Bible in Genesis. In Hebrew, it's Breshit, and we can find how Yeshua was slain from that very word. Bar is son, Rosh means head, the last part is sheet, which means thorns, and Barosh is tree. So right here in the very first word of Genesis, Breshit, we have the Son of God crowned with thorns on his head, hung upon a tree.
El Shaddai Ministries is hosting a screening of The Forgotten People, Christianity, and the Holocaust. It promises to be a powerful learning experience that you won't want to miss. Monday, August 15th. Do you need to grow in your spirit? There's a resource available, even someone waiting to pray with you. Go to spirit1053.com and click Need Him or call 1-866-NEED-HIM.
So that's the first one.
PJTN presents a groundbreaking film from two-time Emmy Award-winning director Stan Moore, The Forgotten People, Christianity and the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism has been a part of Christianity for over 2 millennia, and today we're witnessing the rise of a new anti-Semitism, not only anti-Jewish, but also anti-Israel and anti-Zionist as well. The Jewish people and the state of Israel are once again facing extreme persecution worldwide. Now it's time for Christians to rise up and take a stand. Now it's time to say, never again. Join PJTN at Church for All Nations in Tacoma for an exclusive screening of the most important film every Christian must see, The Forgotten People, Christianity and the Holocaust. Admission is free, Monday, August 15th at 7 p.m. Also attend a special teaching on Saturday, August 13th at 10 a.m. with Pastor Mark Biltz and the film's producer. Register today at pjtn.org.
So, anyway, that's what's playing 60 times, roughly, this next week. And so let's stand and we'll close with prayer. And we do have lots of different things available at that table if you want them. Sign-ups for, we don't have sign-ups for the fair, but we will have that again next week. But we do have the other things if you want them. Father, we just thank you so much for your Torah and for your word. And I pray, Lord, you would give all of us eyes to see and ears to hear. In Yeshua's name, amen. Thank you. Thank you for studying with us today. If you have any questions regarding the material discussed, please contact me at my email address. It's pastormark@elshaddaiministries.us. Be blessed and shalom.